Alright, let's explore how this weapon, the Nunchaku, works for self-defense. So there's a lot of things you can do with the Nunchaku, and if you're familiar with this channel, you'll know that I've used a lot of these things even in pressure testing and sparring, even stuff like this. I think I'll place a clip and show that. But sparring is not the same as self-defense. Even like combat sports is not the same as self-defense. So we're gonna think about the context and try and see what works with these for self-defense. So first of all, let's go over the defense. So for the Nunchaku, you can do a lot of different types of blocks, the chain and stuff. But for self-defense, what I recommend is your feet. You're gonna use footwork to keep a distance if possible, and you're not gonna do this, rather you're gonna do something like this to try and keep the opponent at bay, and then just keep that distance where you can strike the opponent and the opponent can't get near you. So obviously if it's a self-defense encounter, perhaps the situation starts in close range like this and he suddenly attacks, then of course you can't rely on that. Then perhaps you'll hold it like this and do a strike like this, or just a headbutt or whatever. But once you have some distance, you're gonna use your feet and you're gonna use some swings to try and keep the opponent at distance. So that's the only reason to do the spins, is to try and maintain distance if at all possible. If the opponent has a weapon and you're aware that there's a weapon, then it can make sense to use the chain. But you're not going to try and be fancy, like if he swings high you do this, and if he goes to the side you do this kind of block or this. You're just gonna keep it like this and you're just gonna move. You can twist your body, you don't have to step, whatever works for you, but you're not going to do any complex technique trying to block against the weapon. Like even you might see some mention that you can wrap around the hand like this type of thing, and then you can create a wrist lock using this. That works as well, but for self-defense you don't want to do that. You don't want to spend the time in close distance. This weapon is just for blunt force and then maintaining distance. Now let's go over the strikes. So when I spar with these, where I don't recommend using this type, but rather a sparring version, I don't always go full power with the swings. I may hit the opponent simply something like this or something like that, and that can do a lot of damage and definitely hurt your opponent. But for self-defense, you want to aim towards possibly finishing the fight in just a single strike if possible. So if the opponent comes near you, I want you to engage your hip, so you can hear it almost like. And yeah, in terms of legalities, like you can never start a fight for self-defense, of course, and this kind of weapon also means there's a bigger chance that you might get in legal troubles. But in the court of law, they won't tell the difference whether you struck the opponent like this and had to strike him several times, or if you did just a single strike like this. So definitely engage the hip if it's for self-defense. That's it. And I also recommend sparring with these, just even though it's not the same as a self-defense scenario. It's great being able to use these, not just focusing on spins and forms, but actually getting used to combining these, even if necessary, with a kick or something. Get yourself a pair without the chain, with a rope instead, and with some padding around these sticks. That's it. Hope you enjoyed the video.
After years of free content, the time has come where I need a helping hand from some of you. You can support me with $3 each month, or 5 or 10 for a few extra benefits. Supporting Zen-Dragon via Patreon will probably make no difference to you financially. If you're living hand to mouth, I don't want your money. Then I'd rather you keep them for yourself. Don't worry, I'll be alright. The donations are in place to help cover equipment and other expenses for the channel. Now that I'm also a father, it's more challenging than ever to find the time to create and share free content. But if enough of you support on Patreon, there will come a day where I can cut down my 9-to-5 job, either partially or altogether, which will make it sustainable to continue creating and sharing free content here on YouTube. Even if that does not happen, I'll still continue sharing, but possibly with longer breaks in between. Thanks for listening. Now visit my Patreon, that's patreon.com/Zen-Dragon. I greatly appreciate you for listening and for continually watching Zen-Dragon.